In this lesson, we are going to discuss the transform roller tab, which is this guy right over here. To speed up the process, I've already attached a forest pack and just attached the teapot that we have over here. So what does the transform tab do? Now, this is probably one of the most important tabs to actually use because this is going to give us randomization. It's going to make all of our scattered objects look different from one another. So you need to imagine that if you're populating your entire forest with one, maybe two different kinds of trees, you need them all to look a little bit different. And that is where the transform tab right over here comes into play. We're going to be able to give a random translation, which means a slight movement in the X, Y, and Z. We're going to be able to give a random rotation to each object and even a random scale. So really important to understand how all of these work in order to get a really good looking realistic environment. So let's start at the very top. The first thing we need to do obviously is just enable it. That's with a simple click of a button. Once we've done that, we've got a couple of parameters over here. We got the X, Y, and Z, which obviously represents the movement direction. We got a minimum and a maximum. So for example, let's put minimum of 20 and a max of 20 and press enter. And immediately you can see if I switch it on and off, what's happened is that it's moved each object off its own pivot point -20% and a max of 20%. So it's ranging between those two numbers. Again, the Y, -20 and a positive of 20. And then if we just rotate a bit, we can see over here, -20 and 20 again. So now, even though it's the same object, you can see that it does look a bit better and more realistic if it was in an environment. We got a couple of options over here, which we'll skip for last. Let's jump into the rotation. Same concept. I'm going to enable it. So let me switch off the translation and have a look the difference between adding a very simple rotation. All of these objects now look very unique from one another. Switching that off and then going into the scale. So let's enable that and have a look. All of them do look unique to one another. Now the scale option has a locked aspect ratio, so we are scaling it uniformly from the X, Y, and Z. If you prefer to only have it in the X, Y, or in fact none, that opens up all of them, then you can manipulate all of them. Just obviously be careful because you are distorting the actual items. Let's go back to the standard. Switch that off. So if I switch on all three items, have a look how very unique the scene looks now. All of them are facing a different direction, different rotation, and they have different scaling. So really important. Now when you are using the presets inside the Forest Pack Pro, the transform tab has already been adjusted for you, but feel free of course to go inside and further manipulate it if you want. So let us switch these off quickly and let us go all the way to the translation tab at the top here. So I'm going to switch these all the way to 0, 0, and 0. And over here we have a map slot. Now we got two options for the map slot. The first option is to use a map that has black and white pixels. The second option over here, we can convert that into only using the RGB values. Let's first start off with a very simple black and white image. I'm going to go into the material editor and I've already set this up. What I do like to do, just for my own visual reference, is that I will attach a standard material to the actual object just so I can actually see the actual movement of the items. So what I need to do now is the bitmap. You need to click and drag the bitmap into the map slot and say instance. So remember, the bitmap comes in here. The only reason that I have a material here is to attach it onto the item just so you can visually see how this works. So now that we have the distribution map that I've put on here, really important, make sure that you activate the actual map. Without these little ticks over here, for example, if I just go, let's say -20 and 20, it's going to do the exact same translation even though there's a map in here. Now if I activate the map, then things are going to start changing. So in this map mode, we need to know that the white colors will represent the max values, and then the darker toward the black colors will control the min values. So I'm going to put these all the way at 0. So we just learned that the minimum is for the black colors or the black pixels right over here. So I'm going to adjust this in the negatives and have a look. Only the scattered objects that are on the black pixels are actually moving. If I push the minimum value into the positives, then the whites are going to start moving. Same concept as the Y. So let's activate the map on both of these. The Y, negative, only the darker pixels move. If we go into the positive, then only the white pixels will move. And of course the Z will be exactly the same concept. So that is using a black and white image or a gradient map. So I'm going to reset all of these back to 0. The next option is the map channel, which we have discussed. This is where you can use the UVW mapping coordinates of the scattered surface in order to control the scattering pattern. This option over here, color map RGB XYZ. So what this is referring to is saying that you can use a colored map if you'd like, and what's going to happen is that the red is going to be your X, your green will be your Y, and your blue will be your Z value. So let's go into the material editor, and I've already prepared a map for us. So again, I'm just going to show you visually what is happening over here. And remember, the bitmap needs to go into the map slot, and let's click the instance. So now we just learned that the red is going to be the X. Let's make sure that we tick color map right over there and make sure that these three are also ticked. So now if I move the max, it is going to be the red. If I move the max in the Y, it'll only be the green, and then the Z will only be the blue. If we go into the negative values, you'll see over here negative moves everything except the red. So it works on positive values over here. Next we have this option here, probability map. This is going to give us extra randomization to our units, but first it's important to understand that this works with a black and white image. So first thing is first, let's deactivate the color map. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into material editor. Let's add the same map that we've been using, instance, and again, just so we can visually see how things are working, let's add that to the surface. So the probability map works on its own, meaning it's got its own built-in map, almost like a noise map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you with a couple of examples. We just learned that the max value will control the white pixels, which is great. The problem is have a look. It is very uniform. They look like soldiers. They are moving together, but they don't look really randomized or unique. If you want to add extra randomization, a probability map is your best bet. Activating this, you can see they've shifted just a little bit, and now that I move the max values, you can have a look at what's happening. So they are moving, even though they're all on the white, they are moving at different values. So this again can help you in very large scenes. Let us deactivate the translation and let us experiment with the rotation. So let's enable the parameter of rotation, and now we can choose a min and a max value on how we actually want to rotate all of our items, which of course gives us a lot more freedom to make our scenes look randomized and natural. We can allocate maps again underneath the map slot. Let's go and activate the black and white image that we've been using, making sure that the map is activated on the side. And what we can do now is we just learned that the white pixels will be the positives in all the directions. We learned that the negative values will obviously work on the darker black pixels. The same concept applies if it's a color map, so let us jump into the color map quickly, right over there. Let's make sure we see the color map, click drag instance. Let us change to color map as well, otherwise it's not going to work. Let us just reset all of these values, and now you can start seeing, and remember that the red is going to be the X, so the X gets controlled here. The Y is obviously the green, and the blue is the Z. So we also discussed the probability map by adding basically more randomization to it. There is a probability curve, so if you click on edit, you'll be able to manipulate this curve as well to get better results for yourself. Next, if we close and deactivate rotation, we get the scale. Again, it's exactly the same. So let us enable the scaling, and just to go in order, let us do the white and black map first. Let's activate the scale, and now we can choose max size and a min size, which definitely helps. We can choose the local aspect ratio, either all three at once, just the XY, or none. Next, we can control it via a map, which we've been doing this entire time. So let's grab our map right over there. Let's instance that, and now what's going to happen is, remember, the max is on the white, the min is obviously on the darker pixels. Probability map we've already discussed, as well as the color map, and the probability curve is the same as the rotation. Now another option over here is the mirroring, which enable horizontal mirror. This is really useful if you're using items that need to be randomized where the front and the back look identical to one another. So for example, if you're using hedges. So if I simply just deactivate the scale quickly and just enable horizontal mirror, you'll see that they have mirrored one another randomly. Now again, this helps if you're creating hedges. So the front of the hedge and the back of the hedge, they roughly look more or less the same. If we create a long hedge, we can enable horizontal mirror so that it looks more natural when they're all connected to one another. So transform tab is a really important rollout to understand in order for your vegetation to look more natural.